The NFL draft just wrapped up a couple weeks back, and now that we've had some time to really digest it, I want to put out a video about the 32 picks that really set the tone for the rest of the draft. Some teams made huge improvements, some teams made huge mistakes. And with that said, I want to dive into my round one draft grades. But before we get started, if you want more content like this, leave a like and subscribe. I'm a college student, and content like this takes a lot of my personal time, but every single like or subscription really makes the effort feel worth it. And with that said, let's jump into my 2025 Round 1 draft grades. Okay, so let's start this thing off with Cam Ward. First overall pick in this year's draft. The Titans drafted him. For me, this is an easy A, right? A- was the grade I chose to take. I could see you going B+ at absolute lowest, but I think anything from a B+ to an A makes a lot of sense here. Here's the thing about Cam Ward, right? He didn't get a lot of attention from social media this year. He didn't get a lot of attention because everyone knew he was far and away the number one pick. Everyone knew it. Because the Titans were a team that needed a quarterback, and there's no other quarterback even remotely close to his caliber in this class, he didn't get a lot of attention, but the film speaks for itself. Cam Ward in last year's class would have been the QB3. I truly do think that. I think Cam Ward is a very good quarterback. Now, is he some generational, insane player? No, he's not the best player in the class, but he's an elite quarterback, potentially. I'm expecting him to at some point develop into an elite quarterback. And at first overall, I like that. Again, he's not quite the best player in his class, but considering how valuable an elite quarterback can be for a team, I have no problems with this pick whatsoever. Now, the next pick here, Travis Hunter. I just said it with that Cam Ward pick. Cam Ward isn't quite the best player in the class. That's because that's what Travis Hunter is. Travis Hunter is the best player in the class, at least in my humble opinion, right? This is someone that can be a very good corner for you and can be one of those top 10 receivers in the NFL. He could play both ways and be very, very, very good on both sides of the ball. Not to mention, he has meat on the bone at both positions, right? He can get better at corner. He can get better at wide receiver. The thing I love about Travis Hunter is a lot of his skill set comes from how smart he is, his feel for the game, his ability to settle versus zone coverage. He's such a good receiver because he knows what corners are thinking because he plays corner. He's such a good corner because he knows how receivers like to play the game because he has played receiver. That's what makes Travis Hunter such a dangerous player. And then when you mix such a smart athlete with that athletic profile, I mean, this guy is going to be electrifying. It's just a question of whether he'll be electrifying on offense or defense. The Jaguars have a need at both positions. This one's an A. This one is a very clear, phenomenal pick, in my opinion. Travis Hunter is that good of a player. For me, you got to be positive on this pick. You got to. I get it. Jacksonville traded up, and they did have to, use some draft capital in order to do that, but this is the type of player that you like to trade up for. Next up, I have Abdul Carter. I know some people see Abdul Carter as like the best player in this class, and I get it. I'm not quite as high on the individual player. That being said, what this guy can do rushing the quarterback, it's going to mean a lot to a Giants team that is already very good on the defensive line. This might be what makes them go from one of the best defensive lines in the sport to the best. Right, this pick right here, Abdul Carter, he's going to do a lot for them. He fits the scheme well. He's someone that is going to be able to drop back into coverage. He's someone that is going to be able to rush the quarterback, and he's going to make some big plays against the run. I don't love the consistency of Abdul Carter's game because he is a little bit of a lighter guy who can't hold his ground at some elite level, but that's why he's going to be in a rotation here. I think in order to get the most out of Abdul Carter, you got to rotate him in and out. And this is a Giants room at the edge position where you're deep. You have Kayvon Thibodeaux. You have Brian Burns. You are only going to be seeing the best out of Brian Burns. You're only going to be seeing the best out of Kayvon Thibodeaux. And you're only going to be seeing the best out of Abdul Carter because of this rotation. So because I like the fit. Then we move over to the fourth pick, Will Campbell, going to the Patriots. I think the Patriots knew they were going to take a tackle. It was just a question of which one. Will Campbell, yeah, he has short arms. Yes, he has some footwork issues, but for the most part, his game and his film looks great. Great against some of these top-tier edge rushers. He had a very, very good career with LSU. And he has that personality that you look for in a Vrabel guy. I really like the fit in terms of this personality with this culture. I think it's what Mike Vrabel wants to build this locker room around, guys like him. Still, though, there are flaws with the prospect. There's no doubting that. But Will Campbell is the type of guy that you would hope can be a landmark for your offensive line. Then we move over to number 5. The Browns traded back. And we're still able to get an unbelievable interior defensive lineman. Mason Graham, this player out of Michigan. Stout defender. He has so much finesse in his game. He is such a technique-savvy player who could also anchor down, stay in his gap, and not get moved. He is so effective at pretty much every facet of being a defensive lineman. Can get to the quarterback, can stand his ground and defend the run. He could do it all. Put that on the same defensive line as Myles Garrett. This Browns defense can really, really impress some people in this upcoming year, and it's going to start with that defensive line. Mason Graham, I really think he's going to be a foundational player for that team. Then, number 6, we have Ashton Jeanty. The thing about this class is that there's a couple of guys that really just stand out. Mason Graham, who I just talked about with Cleveland, he was one of those guys. Travis Hunter, he was one of those guys that really stood out. Ashton Jeanty is that next guy that really, really stands out. Just so much better than every other player in this draft. Like, he's really in a tier of his own with those other 2 guys that I just mentioned. Ashton Jeanty, in my personal opinion, best running back I've ever evaluated. And I've been evaluating prospects since 2020. So I'm saying better than Bijan, better than Breece Hall, Ken Walker, those guys. This is the best prospect that I've evaluated at the running back position. You watch what he did at Boise State. He was a man amongst boys, and I think that's going to carry over to the NFL. I really do. He's someone that can catch the ball in the backfield, and he's just such a dominant runner. He's going to be a true asset to this Raiders team that's really going to put them over the edge, going from what seemed to be a pretty good, pesky roster to now I think they can really win some games, even in a competitive AFC West. Then we'll move over to Armand Membou. Membou's interesting because he has this sky-high potential because of how physically dominant of a player he is. I mean, he will destroy guys. But there is a little bit of questions about his pass protection ability. He will be the type of guy that you build your rushing attack behind, and he's going to be very good at that. But again, the pass pro, it's a little bit raw. You want to see him do some work. Still, though, he's the type of gamble that you like to take with that 7th overall pick. I really like that choice by the Jets. Then 8th overall, we have Tet McMillan. Tet is an interesting player because he could be that 50-50 ball guy for you. He's a great possession player, but he's also a very nuanced route runner, and he's going to be able to contribute to your team a lot in that way. I think the Panthers didn't have a player that you look at and say, oh, yeah, he's going to win his matchup, whether it's at the catch point or with his route running. He's going to consistently win his matchup in one-on-one coverage. And I think Tet McMillan, I don't think he has the ability to become an elite receiver, but I think he will always be a stable one for this team. And that comes straight from day one. I truly do think that. And that's something the Panthers have been missing. That's something that Bryce Young needs to take that next step as a quarterback. He was really impressive last year. I love what Bryce Young did. Now I'm excited to see what he could do with a reliable wide receiver one. And then if Xavier Legette and the rest of that younger receiver core can really get going, this Panthers team can develop to be really, really dangerous. I'm excited to see what Tet can do for this Panthers team. Then pick number 9 with the Saints, Kelvin Banks. I was not the biggest Banks guy. I thought there were some very clear flaws with his game, but the athletic profile is very impressive. Very impressive. There's no doubt about that. And because of that, again, it's the same thing I talked about with Membou. He's a developmental guy. But this is a Saints team that, in all fairness, it's not like they're trying to compete right away. It's fine that they're trying to develop a player. Banks isn't a top 10 pick, in my personal opinion. I just thought there were a couple too many flaws with his game. But I understand the logic behind the pick. I know I gave it a lower grade, but it's definitely not some awful, inexcusable pick. But when guys like Colston Loveland are still on the board, I know this might have not been a great pick for the Saints, but I'm just saying there were very clearly better players available, and Colston Loveland, who the Bears took, is a very clear example of that, because Loveland is going to be a great slot guy. Whether you consider him a slot tight end, a jumbo slot, whatever you want to call him, he's going to be such a great receiver from the slot because he is so nuanced, right? What makes Travis Kelce so great? He settles well versus zone coverage. He is so spatially aware. And that is the highlight of Colston Loveland's game, right? You have a quarterback in Caleb Williams that loves to make plays off script. Colston Loveland is going to love helping Caleb Williams do that because he does his best work off script, just like Caleb Williams. I really like that fit. I think Loveland, even though it's a loaded offense, he's really going to carve out a role for himself. I think he's going to be a very important player for this Ben Johnson Chicago Bears offense. As we leave the top 10, we're now going to head over to one of my favorite players in the class, a player that I just fell in love with when I was evaluating him, Mykel Williams. And he landed in San Fran. This is going to quickly become one of the top, if not the top, edge rusher duo in the NFL. I'm just making sure you all know that. Nick Bosa on one side, Mykel Williams on the other side. By the way, the 49ers added a lot more young, nice defensive pieces to that defensive line. Oh, man. They're going to be cooking. Mykel Williams, he can set the edge damn well, but he also has a bag of moves that gets really underrated. I think people are kind of suffering the same way that they did with Jared Verse, right? Everyone's criticizing Jared Verse. Oh, all he has is a bull rush. That's not true with Mykel Williams, and that wasn't true with Jared Verse, right? Jared Verse, everyone said he only has a bull rush because he always won with his bull rush. But when he needed to use a different move, he was very good at it. Mykel Williams has the same exact quote-unquote problem. I had Mykel Williams as the best edge in the class, and I stand by it, right? San Fran drafting him, putting him on the other edge with Nick Bosa, that's going to go really, really well as the 49ers try and recreate the same type of defense that the Rams had last year. Then pick number 12, Tyler Booker was a player that some teams evaluated and said this guy is a fourth rounder for me. But there's other teams, depending on your scheme, that looked at him and said this is a top 5 player in the class, right? If you're a team that wants to run a lot of duo, a lot of power football, Tyler Booker's outstanding. As long as you're not asking him to be a move blocker, he's going to be outstanding for you because this guy mauls people and he's an unbelievable pass protector. Some of the best functional strength you'll see at the offensive guard position. It almost reminds you a little bit of some other great Cowboys offensive linemen throughout the past couple of years and throughout their history, right? A player that doesn't move overly well, but man, when they get their hands on you, you're dead. Like the play's over for you. The running back is going to run right behind them, and they're just going to completely pave the way. But if you are a team that runs a lot of outside zone, really just a lot of zone, Tyler Booker, you're not going to like him. The Cowboys are a team that likes to run a lot of duo, and that's why they added a guy like Tyler Booker. He's going to be outstanding for them because he is a great scheme fit there, and he's perfect for that type of offense. But while we're talking about big, strong guys, we got to talk about Kenneth Grant. But Kenneth Grant is a little bit different than Tyler Booker because not only is he big and strong, but damn can this guy move. He could chase down an outside zone, but he could also be that two-gap guy in the middle that blows up an inside zone, right? He's going to do everything for you from the interior. Very nice athlete right here. And that's why you got to love him going to Miami, right? Because Miami, they're going to use every single one of these players in unique ways. They want to take advantage of athletes. They want their defensive linemen dropping back into coverage, and that includes the interior guys. Kenneth Grant is going to be asked to move a little bit more than your average, 330-pounder. All right, he's going to be a looper on some stunts. He's going to be dropping back into coverage. Kenneth Grant is going to be used in a lot of different ways because that is how this defense likes to operate. It is a McDonald's-style defense, so they're going to do that type of stuff. I'm excited to see them do it. Kenneth Grant is a very nice fit on that defense and overall just a very, very good player. Tyler Warren's another great player. Right, Tyler Warren is another player you could use in a lot of different ways. Tyler Warren's a tight end, but he could line up as an up back. He could line up as a running back for you. He could line up as an outside receiver, a slot receiver. He can do it all, Tyler Warren. Great blocker, but also just a weapon after the catch. He's the type of guy that makes it easy for an offensive coordinator because you get the ball in his hands and he does the rest. Right, just an outstanding after catch player who could also win at the catch point. He's not too great of a route runner, but that's fine because he's able to make those contested catches, and if you're able to scheme him up some receptions in space, he's going to make something happen. He's a true playmaker from the tight end position that you could also use at several other positions. Love the addition of Tyler Warren for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, this next one, from a grade perspective, a lot of people love this one because it's a player who fell. A lot of players thought this next guy, Jalen Walker, was going to go at 8 to the Panthers. And I would have liked that fit. I would have understood why they did it. But personally, I wasn't a big Jalen Walker guy. I thought that wouldn't have been a great pick because I didn't fall in love with the player. And I feel that way about Jalen Walker even at 15. I still don't love the value. I like it. This is by no means a bad grade. But I'm not as high on Jalen Walker as some other people. I love him as a versatile weapon. I think if you have him as an off-ball linebacker in an already completed defense and then you use him as kind of the Swiss Army knife, then I really like it. But the Falcons are far from complete. Very, very far from complete. And my big concern is that Jalen Walker is going to be used primarily as this edge rusher, and they're not going to be doing much with him as an off-ball guy, and I don't love him as a pure edge rusher. I think if you're trying to get the most out of this guy, and if you're trying to really get a top 30 pick worth of value out of him, you have to use him as this Swiss Army knife. And I don't think the Falcons are a defense that could really do that. I really don't. Now, if they do him as an edge rusher, okay, he could do that and he's fine and he'll be able to spot drop. And overall, he can be one of those edge rushers that you trust to blitz, but then they'll also spot drop and be a nice coverage player for you. I don't doubt that. And Raheem Morris does like having that type of player play as an edge rusher for him. But I don't think that's how you get the most out of this guy. I really don't. I think in order to get the most out of him, you have to have him as an off-ball linebacker that you'll occasionally line up on the edge. And I don't think that's his role with this team. And maybe it will be. But then it's a question of I don't think Raheem Morris really utilizes guys like that overly well. I would have loved for this guy to land with a Todd Bowles or some more blitz-heavy type of coach, but that's not what Raheem Morris is. Now, Jalen Walker does benefit from a pick they made later on in this first round, but we'll get to that later. Even with that pick, though, I still don't love the pick to the extent that some other people do because I'm just not a huge fan of Jalen Walker as a player in this defense, although I do understand the vision here. Absolutely. Then this next pick, Walter Nolen, this is just a really, really solid one. Walter Nolen can kind of be a little bit more of an experiment. Right now, the way he goes about engaging with offensive linemen is far from ideal. He tries to engage with his shoulder pads instead of using his hands, but his good reps are damn good. This is going to be a young piece that he could develop into an absolute stud. Absolute stud. And this is a Cardinals team that has a lot of guys like that. I think this Cardinals team has the ability to be a very nice defense for the next decade because of young players like Walter Nolen. Then another experimental defensive lineman was taken. This time it was an edge rusher, Shemar Stewart, going to Cincinnati. I like Shemar Stewart, and him going at 17 is not bad value. But I'm lower on this pick because the Bengals have tried to do this repeatedly. They've tried to add a young, raw defensive lineman and try and develop them, and they haven't been able to. I mean, they've failed this time after time after time in round one. I don't know why they're still trying to do it. They have other developmental guys that they drafted early. Try and develop one of those guys. Don't keep trying to land a different player because clearly you're the issue. Either try and go for a more pro-ready prospect, which Shemar Stewart definitely is not, Or just sign a free agent, man. Maybe focus on the edge rushers you currently have on your roster, like Trey Hendrickson, and getting the deal done with them. Maybe that should be your approach. Don't draft another developmental edge rusher because when you drafted Myles Murphy, it didn't work out, right? Because when you drafted these other raw players, Amarius Mims was another example, they didn't land. The Bengals have been awful at drafting because they keep taking this approach. They keep aiming for upside. Maybe the reality is your coaching staff doesn't know how to develop those players. Maybe you should be going for more pro-ready guys. Not someone like Shamar Stewart, who has all the tools on earth, but is far from an NFL-ready player at the moment. He can develop into an absolute stud, but not in Cincinnati, because Cincinnati hasn't shown the ability to develop these raw players. 18th, Gray Zabel. This is the opposite issue. I love the fit, right? Gray Zabel in a zone-heavy Kubiak offense. I like that. Zabel is a lot better when in space, but I don't love the player. Okay, I don't think Zabel is some first-round guy, in my opinion. Drafting him in the mid-first round, I am not a fan of it, but they needed an offensive lineman. Listen, if Sam Darnold's going to be your quarterback, you got to be able to protect him, because when he gets pressured, he falls apart. So you have to bring in guys like Zabel that can be foundational pieces for you, right? Again, I don't love the player, but he fits that scheme really well, and it's a very clear position of need for them. So I get it, although I don't love the player. And then probably the biggest head scratcher of the first round, Emeka Egbuka going at 19. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Jalen McMillan was a stud last year. Absolute stud for you. Chris Godwin, you just paid him. Mike Evans, you have him under contract for a while. Even if the plan is to move on from Mike Evans as he gets older, Emeka Egbuka is not that style of player. He is not this deep threat, big playmaker, win at the catch point type of guy, right? He's more similar to the guy that they just drafted last year and had a very good rookie year, Jalen McMillan. He's more similar to Chris Godwin, who they just extended. So I don't get it at all. I really don't understand the idea behind this one. I don't understand his role. Although I like Egbuka, I just don't understand what he's going to be doing for this team. Not even in the, this season, fine. If he wasn't playing much of a role for one season, whatever. But even down the line, I don't get it. Because Godwin's under contract for a while, right? You have McMillan, who they just drafted last year, who was very good for them. Mike Evans is under contract for a while with them. I just don't get it. And again, even if you move on from Mike Evans, Egbuka is a very different style of player. Unless they really start to rock in 10 personnel, and then they start rocking 4 wide most of the time, I don't see what Egbuka is going to be doing for this team. I really don't get spending a first rounder on a wide receiver if you're the Buccaneers. Then, pick number 20, we have Jahdae Barron going to the Broncos. Listen, this is a defense that's very stout, very stout, specifically up front. That pass rush is very dangerous. Vance Joseph loves to send pressure, and he likes to play man coverage behind it. Barron is a very good player to do that with. I really like Barron and his versatility. I don't think they're going to take advantage of that too much here, but that's fine because he's going to be a damn good man corner. You have Surtain and Barron as your two DBs, as your two corners. Yeah, I love that. I think that's going to work really, really well for you for a while, right? And you're going to be able to keep dialing up those pressures because you can trust Barron one-on-one. You can trust Surtain one-on-one. This is a good formula for success. I'm glad to see that they're really buying into it by stacking up more from a talent perspective. Because that's the thing about that defensive scheme Vance Joseph is running. You need to be talented. You need talent in order to run a blitz-heavy, man-heavy scheme. Derek Harmon, then, going to Pittsburgh. I like Derek Harmon. He is the exact type of defensive tackle that I love, right? A big guy that just eats up gaps. I like him a lot. That being said, Pittsburgh, I don't think this is what you need. You have Keanu Benton. You have Cam Hayward for a little bit longer. I know he's old and you're looking for a replacement. Okay, it's a stacked D-line class. Do you really have to go round one? Again, I like the player, but it's a stacked D-line class. I feel like you could have waited and still got a very good player to eventually replace Cam Hayward and be the Robin to Keanu Benton's Batman. And then you have TJ Watt and just overall a great edge room. Like, I think the defensive line is already set. Pittsburgh's trying to become that extremely competitive team. I get it. You want to copy Philly and have that dangerous rotation of guys. I understand that, but you don't need to use round 1 picks to do that, considering that you have a lot of flaws throughout this roster. You're very weak at receiver. Very weak at receiver. Now that you moved on from George Pickens, you're very weak at receiver. Right? Quarterback, they have the worst quarterback situation in the league, quite possibly. I don't think that's an exaggeration to say. Their quarterback situation is awful. And yeah, they drafted Will Howard later on, but Will Howard is a backup. Like, that is what he will be. That is what he's going to be for you. They needed a quarterback. I get it. None of the quarterbacks that were available really are too good either, so I understand that, but wide receiver would have been nice. Something on the offensive end would have been really nice, considering the state of this team. The defense hasn't been your problem, Pittsburgh. It hasn't. If you're trying to really get over that hump and not just settle for 500 every year, you have to improve in the areas where you're weak. You can't just keep adding depth at where you're already strong, because that clearly hasn't done many favors for you. I like the player, but I don't adore the pick. Omarion Hampton went 22nd, running back for the Chargers. It's weird with running backs in this class because there's some clear top-end guys, but it's also a really deep class. Like, I think there were guys that could play a substantial role for teams that got drafted in round 7. I truly do feel it that way. Omarion Hampton is a day 1 caliber back, but I think because of the depth in this class, I would have rather waited. I also think the Chargers needed wide receiver help. I think they need guys that will help Justin Herbert, not just the run game. I know Greg Roman is all about running the ball. If it was up to him, he would run the ball on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. Like, that's what he wants to do. But what was their problem last year, right? When they got into the playoffs, there was no one that could catch the football. There was no one to help Herbert. And I guess the vision that Harbaugh has for this team, for this offense, is we want to be so good at running the ball, we don't need to rely on those guys, but I don't think you're anywhere near that right now. I like some of the pieces on their offensive line. They have a great tackle duo. But even with Omarion Hampton, I don't think the run game is quite good enough for you to say we could win games just running the football and occasionally throwing the ball to Ladd McConkey. Like, I think there's very clearly more improvement needed in multiple areas of that offense. And I think even with Omarion Hampton, this isn't going to be that dominant rushing attack they're trying to get. Now, Green Bay, this is a team that a lot of people are talking about needing a wide receiver. This is the player that I think the Chargers should have drafted. Matthew Golden, great asset, in my opinion. He's someone that has just great body control considering his speed. A speedy wide receiver with good body control, that's a dangerous combination. Like, that always works. Always works unless they get injured. That always works. Matthew Golden is a decently nuanced route runner. I feel like that aspect of his game is very underrated. And you give a nuanced route runner to a Shanahan coach like LaFleur, who knows how to draw passing concepts, yeah, good things are going to happen here. Matthew Golden, I think he's going to establish himself as that true wide receiver 1. Now, Donovan Jackson isn't a player that I love. He isn't. But they did need interior offensive line help. I understand why they made this pick. I just thought there were better players that fit the unique scheme that Brian Flores has, right? There's a lot of versatile Swiss Army knives. Malachi Starks was a guy I would have loved to see land here. And the fact that they missed that opportunity, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like a team sat there and said, okay, we need an interior offensive lineman, so no matter how the board falls, we are going to draft our top interior offensive lineman. And I just can't get behind that draft strategy. Unless you're a very well-rounded team that, just made it to the Super Bowl last year, I can't get behind that. This is a team that lost early in the playoffs last year. New quarterback, I get it. You want to help him by bolstering up that offensive line, but if you ask me, I still say take the player that will do the most for you, right? I get it. You wanted help on the interior offensive line, but Malachi Starks in that defense, that would have been nuts. Okay, even Nick Manwari, I think taking him here, adding him to that defense would have been awesome. right? There's a lot of guys. There's some corners I would have liked to see them add. I just can't get behind this considering how the board fell. I don't love Donovan Jackson as a player. I don't think he's a day one guy. So I'm not huge on this pick, but I definitely see the vision. Now, if we're going to get really negative, we got to talk about this next one. First off, Houston Texans, I don't get why the hell they traded out. Right here with Josh Simmons on the board, that's a slam dunk. That is a slam dunk pick, in my opinion. If the Texans just stayed put and drafted Josh Simmons, bang. Like, that's an awesome pick for them. Instead, the Texans traded out. That was stupid, in my opinion. But what's even stupider is the Giants trading up and drafting a quarterback. I've said this ad nauseum on my podcast. The Giants need to find out what Brian Daboll is. They need to find out what Joe Schoen is. They need to find out the direction of this team. They need to find out if they need to move on to a new head coach. A lot of people were calling for Daboll's head. A lot of people were calling for Schoen's head. So it makes no sense to let them decide on a new quarterback. It makes no sense to give future assets in order to decide on a new quarterback. Because now here's the thing. If they have a bad year, and Daboll looks bad, and Schoen looks bad, and the two of them get fired, now you're looking for a new GM and a new head coach, and now that search is going to be filtered to just guys that like Jackson Dart. And then here's another thing that makes this pick so bad. Jackson Dart isn't good. He isn't good at all. He's downright terrible, considering that he went in round one. Downright terrible. He didn't play in a pro-style offense whatsoever. Like, it was very college-esque. It was a one-read offense. That's all he did. He made one-read concepts. It's not going to be a question of what play is called. It's going to be a question of which route is Jackson Dart going to stare down. That's what this is going to be about. And, maybe you develop him. Brian Daboll, he's developed a quarterback before. He developed Josh Allen. But there's a big difference between Josh Allen and Jackson Dart. Josh Allen had a generational arm. Josh Allen was a freakish athlete on the ground. Jackson Dart, he's a good athlete. Like, he can run pretty well. But he has, if you ask me, a below-average arm. He's extremely inaccurate. His mechanics are awful. So you're going to be doing all that work. You're going to be doing all that work to try and fix the guy. Teach him how to read an NFL offense. Fix his mechanics. Just for him to not have that insane upside. Like, for me, you take an experimental QB1 in round one, you want them to have Jordan Love's arm. You want them to have Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson's mobility. You don't want below average to average arm strength when you're developing a quarterback like that and spending assets in order to get them in round one. Here's the funniest thing about this Jackson Dart pick that makes it so pathetic. And I'm sorry if there's Giants fans listening, because this is going to be the thing that really pisses you off. But it's the reality here. Jackson Dart's ceiling is Daniel Jones. Like, that's the funniest thing about it. It's Daniel Jones, but you trade a little bit of the speed for power as a runner. And that's his absolute ceiling. So that's what makes this hilarious, in my opinion. That's what makes this hilarious. Because you moved on from Daniel Jones, and now you traded up and drafted, at best, Daniel Jones. It's such a pathetic pick. It's an awful pick. It's one of the worst picks I've ever seen, frankly. Like, it's a terrible one. Now we move on to another bad pick. Listen, I think the Falcons needed pass rush, but it's a very deep edge class. I'm not a big James Pierce guy, although I love his tools as an athlete. But still, I'm not big on him. You're really going to have to develop the player. I like the scheme fit, once again, and I also like that he's going to free up Jalen Walker a little bit. I think Jalen Walker is now going to be able to do a lot more as maybe, a Swiss Army knife because of James Pierce. But still, I just don't love him. I think James Pierce isn't going to be this great pass rusher that you need. And I wouldn't be surprised if, even though they now spent assets in order to fix that pass rush, it's still not very good. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. Now we move over to Malachi Starks going to the Ravens. We talked a little bit about the McDonald's scheme earlier when we were talking about Kenneth Grant landing with the Dolphins. The Dolphins have a McDonald disciple, so they like to use all 11 players in a bunch of different ways, dropping defensive linemen back into coverage, kind of having this positionless style defense. Malachi Starks is a positionless style player. McDonald had another disciple in Zach Orr, who's now the Ravens defensive coordinator. And he also is a big fan of this positionless defense movement. Guys like Malachi Starks, Kyle Hamilton is another player that they have there that is going to kind of be the example of how Malachi Starks will be used. They're now going to have two guys that do literally everything, right? Because Kyle Hamilton doesn't have a position. He'll play linebacker, he'll play nickel, he'll play safety. He does everything. Malachi Starks is going to do the same exact thing. You're going to have two guys that do everything for you. Two guys that every single snap, you have to wait and see what they do post-snap. Until then, they could be doing literally anything in your mind. Those guys throw off the opposing offense. And when you're able to disguise looks that well, because of players like Starks, like Hamilton, great things happen. Malachi Starks should be a catalyst for some great play in Baltimore from that defense. Then Tyleik Williams. You want to talk about someone that will just eat up the line of scrimmage on the defensive line? Tyleik Williams is a perfect example of that. Aleem McNeil is a similar player to him. And it's good that now, if Aleem McNeil goes down, they still have someone that could be a very stout run defender for them. And that's what this was all about, right? Last year, this Detroit defense got really banged up. They need to add depth. Tyleik Williams is a very nice piece for them that can be a starter. But the point is, now they're able to deal with more injuries because Tyleik is strong enough to make up for having a little bit of a below-average player next to him because of injury, right? When you have players that can make up for other pieces kind of underperforming, that's how you are able to overcome injuries. It's not just depth. It's more about having multiple great players that can really pick up the slack of others. Tyleik Williams can be one of those guys for Detroit. Josh Connerly isn't a player that I love, but I do love the scheme fit. Connerly, I think, I'm being 100% honest here, I think he's generally weak for an NFL offensive lineman. But man, can this guy move. And Cliff Kingsbury, he knows how to use these moving offensive linemen, these move blockers. He's going to get them out in space. He's going to do some crazy things with the guy. I'm really excited to see that. Even though, again, I'm not a big fan of the player, I'm a big fan of the scheme fit there. So I can at least give it that. I thought they should have probably went on the defensive side of the ball, adding someone in the secondary. I thought that would have been a lot nicer. But I still am excited to see what they do with the Josh Connerly right here. Maxwell Hairston went to the Bills. Hairston, he's someone that suffered some injuries throughout his career, but overall he's a nice off-coverage player who's going to do a lot for them because McDermott runs a lot of this off-coverage, whether it's off-man or soft drop zone. He likes to do that type of stuff, and Hairston is damn good at it. I'm very excited to see what Hairston does. He should be the type of piece that this Bills team needs. Right? You want to beat Mahomes, you don't beat Mahomes by sacking him or getting pressure on him. You beat Mahomes by having everyone on the back end hold up and make sure he has no one to throw the ball to. Then, speaking of beating Mahomes, we have Philly with that 31st pick. And the rich get richer. This was one of the best picks of the draft right here. Jahad Campbell. Absolute stud. I think the best linebacker prospect I've ever evaluated. He went 31st to Philly. The rich get richer, man. The rich get richer. This is someone that could play that Roquan Smith role. He could be a cover and clean up linebacker for them. He's one of the best coverage linebackers. I think straight from day one, he's going to be one of the best in the league. I really do think that. He was that good in Alabama in terms of covering players. He's not someone that takes on blocks and really holds his ground overly well, but he could avoid those blocks and then make a tackle. You know, he's a very nice high motor linebacker to throw onto what is already a stacked defense. I love that Philly was able to add just a great player. Go BPA the same way they usually do and add a stud through the draft. Something we've seen Howie Roseman do ad nauseum now, but we've also seen Brett Veach do a lot of them as the Chiefs landed what might have been the single best pick of the first round. Josh Simmons, if this guy can recover from injury, he's the best tackle in the class, and they got him 32nd. This addresses a position of need, and it's important to mention, because of Mahomes and because of just how good the rest of this team is, if Josh Simmons can't recover from the injury, I mean, we saw last year, that was kind of their floor. As long as Mahomes is healthy, it feels like their floor is AFC Championship, Super Bowl. So you know what? I appreciate them taking a little bit of a gamble on a player that's dealing with an injury because the reward can be really, really high for them. They might have a franchise tackle right here. But that is all for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you want more of my content, leave a like, subscribe. Feel free to hit that bell so you know next time I post. Summer's coming up for me. I just wrapped up my freshman year of college, so I plan to put more content out in the nearby future. Thank you all again, though, and I hope to see you again next time.